Hey guys, Dov here, back with another underrated unit for Total War Warhammer 2, and today we've got Silver Helms for the High Elves, who I have to say, in the color scheme of the Knights of Kalendor with that crimson, it look very, very good. We've got 3 Silver Helms on the field against the Beastmen. This is Falcon against Morgan Grat, very good player. We've got an Archmage Lore of Fire here, yeah, like I said, 3 Silver Helms, bunch of Lothran Seaguard, and Spearmen up front, pretty basic, kind of early game high elf build, I guess, besides the Archmage with fire. But for the Beast one, we've got tons of Ungors, Spears, and Ungor Raiders. Got some throwing axes, 2 Razorgore Chariots, very solid here. We've got Morgur, the Shadow Gave, and a Bray Shaman, Lore of Wild plus Lore of Beasts. Lore of Shadow, actually, rather. Penumbral Pendulum, and Bray Scream. Right off the bat, these Silver Helms are going to be getting some hit-and-run charges in the front line. Silver Helms, pretty solid mid-tier shock cavalry, honestly. They often get overlooked in comparison to Dragon Princes, but at either 900 or 1,000 points, depending on whether you want shields or not, they are very cost-effective mid-tier shock cavalry against light units, especially. Of course, Beastmen have almost exclusively light units, so definitely very solid here. Excellent Burning Head, going to roast out some of these Ungors, and the Silver Helms punching through very aggressively. They're going to be able to chase down many routing units as well. You can see this one in the front line has taken quite a bit of damage. I think they got charged by some of the chariots there, but regardless, these other 2 on this flank just absolutely devastating these light Beastmen units. Using them to support this dragon as well, very nice. They do shock damage on the charge, then the dragon can come down and proc a quick terror route. Exactly what happens here. Meanwhile, these other Silver Helms swing around to the main line, get a nice rear charge on these light Beastmen infantry. They're just going to get absolutely torn to shreds. That said, the chariots, obviously, with their higher armor, won't take quite as much damage, and they actually have pretty good armor-piercing damage. They can punch back at the Silver Helms. There's a lot of Ungor Raider fire here as well, and those Silver Helms do not have shields, so it will be pretty impactful there. Breath Attack comes, it does a pretty good amount of damage to the Bray Shaman Lore Wild. Looks like we're going to have a Manticore summon. No, Lothran Seaguard, or on top of the Lothran Seaguard, there's a Chaos Spawn summon there. And Silver Helms here, again, chasing these routing light Beastmen units. They'll be able to not only effectively route them, but also continuously chase them. And there were a lot of Ungor Raiders here. You can see multiple units of Ungor Raiders being tied down by this one Silver Helm. Danger close, fire from the artillery helps to chase them off. And with Martial Prowess active, these Silver Helms are actually very tanky. Once the Martial Prowess drops, the Unshielded ones have kind of low melee defense for what they are, but they're still pretty solid overall. And in a nice wide build like this, where you don't need any healing, I guess he does still have some healing here with the Earthbloods. But yeah, the Silver Helms, they're not a super expensive target, so Earthblood rather than Regrowth does make sense in this context. You want to be able to hit multiple units at the same time, rather than concentrating all of your healing on one cheaper target. But, of course, a lot of the healing is meant for the dragon as well. Primarily for the dragon, in fact. But here, these 2 Silver Helms, look at this. 156 kills, 143, 100 and what? 52, even climbing faster. Yeah, very, very impressive. 143 kills on the Archmage. She's chasing off this Bray Shaman here. The balance power is still going to look pretty close, as Morgur does count for quite a bit on the balance of power. But things are looking pretty tough. I mean, maybe if the Centaurs with throwing axes can do enough work, they were one tool that could have potentially dealt with these Silver Helms. But since the Beastmen infantry got pretty aggressive there and kind of came forward without too much support, the Silver Helms kind of got ransacked there a little bit. Not sure exactly what happened to the chariots. Oh, they're over here, yeah. The chariots overextending as well. This is one thing that you know, as an old school Total War player, this took me a long time to figure out and sort of get to grips, but armor-piercing chariots actually trade pretty good against cavalry in some cases, especially like mid-tier non-specialist cavalry. Silver Helms, you know, like Empire Knights and Reichsguard, stuff like that. Black Knights, you know, those kind of non-specialist, just generalist shock cavalry at the mid-tier. Often these armor-piercing chariots, whether that be the Razorgore, or like I made a video already about the Cold One chariots as well, Gore Beast, stuff like that, White Line chariots, they'll actually trade reasonably well against these types of shock cavalry. So had those chariots been supporting that mainline fight, not only do they have the mass to block the charges in large portion of the charges, I should say, of the Silver Helms. You know, they can also punch back with their high charge bonus, especially on the charge. 80 charge means they're hitting for 109 melee attack on the charge. They're basically guaranteed hits. Even though they have anti-infantry, they're still going to do quite a bit of damage. Again, 80 plus 48, 128 damage on the charge there. Absolutely enough to kill some models on cavalry, especially if you have them fighting on top of spear support. And like in this case, Ungor Spears, a great support unit because they're so fast. But anyway, this is a video about Silver Helms, not about armor-piercing chariots. And the Silver Helms here providing a little bit of mass as the dragon comes in to clean up mortar. There's still the chariots doing a little bit of work, able to clean up a handful of units here, but yeah, those Silver Helms, man, just absolutely ran over this Beastmen army. And this is certainly a matchup. Skaven is also a matchup where I think Silver Helms are pretty solid. Yeah, even Wood Elves, Dark Elves, most matchups, to be honest, where you're not going to face like exclusively heavy infantry, so maybe not against Chaos or Dwarfs. But I would say in most other matchups, it's probably pretty worth it to have maybe 1 to 2 Silver Helms just for, you know, anti-infantry shock duty, or as mass to help tie things down. Didn't show it here, I'll show you guys in the army selection screen, but the Silver Helms with shields, again, once they get that martial prowess, they actually have pretty solid melee defense, probably the best melee defense of any unit in this class. Which is definitely an advantage to them. I mean, granted, their health pool's still pretty small, so you have to be careful, but if you can keep that martial prowess active, they can be surprisingly tanky. And, yeah, they don't have quite as good a charge bonus as other units in this class, but they're still pretty solid. 64 is, you know, right on par. Anyway, balance power slips slightly back as those Silver Helms are routed off. The Archmage here is taking some damage, but of course the fire damage does extra to mortar, and once he gets terrified away, that will be army losses for the Beastmen. So well played to both players. Thanks to Falcon for sending this one in. And Silver Helms, yeah, I see people say all the time that Silver Helms are crap. They're really, really not, to be honest. You just have to use them right. Mid-tier shock cavalry in general is I'm a big fan of. You guys who have watched my channel for a long time know that I'm a fan. Actually, I'm not sure. This replay might be a little bit desynced. Interesting. I see a lot of units kind of just standing around, which is not super characteristic, but I don't know. Maybe they just haven't been noticed. Regardless, I believe this is probably the correct outcome. We didn't see too much desync throughout the course of the battle, and no, okay, it looks like these units are actually moving now. I don't know. Anyway, we'll keep it close on the dragon and not worry too much about that. As the, regardless of, yeah, if it's desynced or not, the outcome is pretty clear at this point that the Beastmen are going to go down. So, again, well played. Those Silver Helms, man, absolutely ruthless. 176, only 37 here by this one that got canned. And you can see, this is the one that got countercharged by the 2 heroic chariots in the front line. And the mass armor piercing there was able to help stop them up and do a lot of damage. The other 2, though, just absolutely raffle-stomped most of this Beastmen army. 176, 2 XP chevrons. Yeah, 208 kills there. Very, very good stuff. The Lothran Seaguard also very solid in this matchup. I'm planning on doing a core unit video about Lothran Seaguard soon-ish. I don't know exactly when, but 162 kills also for the Lore of Fire Archmage. I actually really like this synergy to bring the Lore of Fire Archmage, because obviously she procs Kindle Flame, has really nice AoE damage abilities, and provides terror, along with a life mage, so you got the double caster, heal the fire mage, and then also the Kindle Flame and other shenanigans there. Really good stuff. On Morgengrat's side, like I said, had those chariots been able to support that frontline engagement against the cavalry, which is definitely counterintuitive, like I mentioned. For myself, as an old-school Total War player, this took me a long time to sort of get to grips, because it's very counterintuitive, but honestly, those chariots in the front line would have been quite nice. But anyway, talking a little bit more about Silver Helms, yeah, if you have the points, definitely getting that +8 melee defense for the shields, I think, is absolutely worth it. You have a look here, yeah, upgrading these guys' chevrons doesn't even get them close to that. They only gain +2. They do get some more melee attack and leadership, of course, but you factor in the martial prowess on top of that 30 melee defense, 42 melee defense. If we have a quick comparison to other similar units in the class, obviously Cold War Knight's a little bit different because they're kind of monstrous type cavalry, but only 26 melee defense, right? So even baseline lower. Have a look at Empire Heavy Cavalry. Then, yeah, 28 for Empire Knights. Reichsguard are 29, which is pretty good, but it's still one baseline lower than Silver Helms with shields, which is quite nice. Yeah, obviously Bretonnia is known for its shock cavalry, comparing them to Knights of the Realm. Knights of the Realm, again, even baseline have lower melee defense, right? They do a little bit more damage, slightly faster, have a little bit more HP, and you'll notice again as I was comparing to those other units, again, all the human cavalry have HP. Reichsguard have quite a bit more HP, almost 500 more HP, which does make a pretty big difference. But I mean, the melee defense certainly on Silver Helms is fantastic. Even after that martial prowess drops, they still have best-in-class melee defense, which makes sense. You know, they're high elves; they should have pretty decent stats. So if you are cognizant of that, you know, you can leave them in combat a little bit longer than the other shock cavalry. Although as shock cavalry, you definitely want to be cycle charging them as much as possible, taking advantage of that 64 charge bonus. And I guess I was saying that was a little bit lower, but I guess it's like right on par with. It's like much higher than Empire Knights, right on par with like Reichsguard. And I believe Knights of the Realm were about the same, right? Yeah. Yeah, Knights of the Realm a little bit more, as you would expect. But it's good. Definitely Silver Helms are an option that you should consider. And like with the build I showed off, probably yesterday it was posted with Tehenuin, where that high elf player lacked any kind of cavalry. Certainly even just 1 to 2 units of Silver Helms to provide some kind of mass. And they can hold the line for a second. They're not really meant to be defensive units, but solid melee defense while their martial prowess is active. Good charge damage, heavy armor. Yeah, just overall a pretty good mid-tier shock cavalry, and one that's often overlooked when compared to other units in this class. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.